I should have known trouble was brewing the second I saw Karen marching down the sidewalk like a storm front, her yappy little excuse for a dog trotting beside her. It was 7 a.m., too early for drama, but apparently not for Karen. Let me set the scene. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood where everyone minds their own business. Well, everyone except Karen. She's the self-appointed queen of the street, always ready with an unsolicited opinion or a passive-aggressive note. And her dog? A tiny, trembling menace named Mr. Buttons, who had developed an unhealthy obsession with my front yard. See, I take pride in my plants. Raised beds, herbs, flowers, my little oasis. But Mr. Buttons? He saw it as his personal restroom. Every single day. Morning, Karen chirped as she strolled past my house, pretending she wasn't stopping while Mr. Buttons lifted his leg on my lavender. Karen, I greeted through gritted teeth. Your dog is… Oh, he's just a little thing. He can't possibly be doing any damage, she cut in, waving a dismissive hand like I was the one being unreasonable. Karen, he pees on my plants every day. I pointed to the poor, wilted victims. That's not just a little thing. That's a botanical massacre, she gasped, all dramatic-like. Oh, you're being ridiculous. It's just nature. Maybe you should plant something more resilient, as in resistant to being drowned in dog urine. I took a deep breath. Karen, just keep him off my yard. She let out a fake little laugh and patted Mr. Buttons on the head. Oh, you're so funny. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow? I had a decision to make. Either accept that my plants were doomed to be marinated in Chihuahua piss, or take matters into my own hands. Guess which one I picked. The next morning I was ready. I'd spent the previous night preparing a little surprise for Mr. Buttons. A harmless but effective deterrent. My secret weapon? Citrus. Dogs hate the smell. I scattered orange and lemon peels all over my flower beds, and even sprayed a homemade mix of citrus oil and water around the edges. Sure enough, right on schedule, Karen came strutting down the sidewalk, her personal cloud of entitlement preceding her like a royal escort. Mr. Buttons pranced beside her, looking for his usual spot. And then magic happened. The moment his tiny paws touched my lawn, his little nose scrunched up. He hesitated, sniffed again, then recoiled like I just insulted his entire bloodline. He tried to backpedal so hard he nearly yanked himself out of his rhinestone-studded harness. Karen frowned. What's wrong, sweetie? Go potty. Mr. Buttons wasn't having it. He whined, spun in a circle, then bolted back toward the sidewalk like the grass was made of molten lava. I leaned against my porch railing, sipping my coffee with the satisfaction of a man who just outplayed his worst enemy. Problem, Karen? I asked innocently. She squinted at me, suspicion written all over her face. Did you do something to your yard? I took a slow sip. Just a little gardening, she huffed. Well, I hope it's safe for animals. You wouldn't want a lawsuit on your hands, would you? Yes, the classic Karen move, threaten legal action over absolutely nothing. I gave her my best fake concerned look. A lawsuit? Over lemons? Her lips pursed so tight I thought they might disappear. She tugged Mr. Buttons away and stomped off, probably to file a complaint with whatever non-existent authority she thought controlled my front yard. Victory, right? Not so fast. The next morning, I woke up to something NE on my lawn. Not dog pee. Pile of dog poop. Karen had escalated. Game on. Poop. Right in the middle of my front yard. Not just any poop. Strategically placed poop. Like a little middle finger made of dog waste, perfectly positioned where I'd see it the moment I stepped outside. I stared at it. Sipped my coffee. Stared at it some more. Oh, so this was how Karen wanted to play it? Fine. I grabbed a plastic bag, scooped up the evidence, because I'm not a savage, and spent the next 30 minutes setting my trap. See, Karen thought she was dealing with just another neighbor who would grumble and move on. What she didn't realize was that I am petty on a cellular level. The next morning, I was up before dawn. Hidden behind my curtains, I watched as Karen strutted down the sidewalk, Mr. Buttons trotting along, oblivious to the minefield of passive-aggressive revenge I had created. Let me explain. I had motion-activated sprinklers. Normally, I used them to keep raccoons out of my garden. But today? Oh, today they had a new mission. Karen, smug as ever, let Mr. Buttons wander onto my lawn. The exact second his little paws hit the grass. Whoosh! A jet of water shot out, drenching him instantly. Oh my God! Karen shrieked, yanking on his leash. Mr. Buttons lost his tiny mind. He bolted, slipping and sliding in the wet grass, before scrambling back onto the sidewalk, looking as if he had just survived a war zone. Karen, meanwhile, looked like a drowned rat, mascara running, hair plastered to her face, sheer rage burning in her eyes. I stepped out onto my porch, coffee in hand. Morning, Karen. Bit damp out today. Huh. She pointed a shaking finger at me. You did this on purpose. I raised an eyebrow. I don't control the weather, Karen. You have sprinklers, she screeched. Yep. Gotta keep the plants healthy. Since they've been under attack lately. Karen sputtered, looking like she was about to launch into some ridiculous rant. But then, she noticed something. A sign I had placed in my yard. Caution. Motion-activated sprinklers in use. Legally, I was covered. She opened and closed her mouth, unable to form a coherent argument. Finally, she spun on her soggy heel and stormed off, dragging a traumatized Mr. Buttons behind her. I took another sip of my coffee. Round 2? Mine. But something told me Karen wasn't done yet. I thought the sprinklers would be the end of it. A rational person would have taken the L and moved on. But Karen? Oh no. Karen's ego had taken a direct hit, and she wasn't about to let me get away with embarrassing her in front of the entire street. How did I know? Because 2 days later, I came home to find something new on my lawn. A sign. Not just any sign. A massive, neon orange monstrosity, staked right in the middle of my front yard. Beware, hostile neighbor. Report any harassment to the HOA. I stared at it, blinked, laughed out loud. Oh, Karen. Sweet, delusional Karen. First of all, we didn't even have an HOA. This was a regular neighborhood, not some Stepford Wives dystopia. Second, harassment? For what? Owning functioning sprinklers. I took a deep breath, ran a hand down my face, then did what any mature, responsible adult would do. I went inside and started plotting. So the next morning I waited. Sure enough, Karen soon appeared, smug as ever, dressed in her usual workout gear, which, fun fact, had never actually seen a gym. Mr. Buttons, now deeply suspicious of my lawn, stayed glued to her side. As she passed, she paused, clearly expecting me to react to her little stunt. I just smiled. Nice sign, Karen, I said. Very subtle. She gave me a sickly sweet smile. Oh, I just thought the neighborhood should know about certain toxic individuals. I nodded. Totally agree. That's why I made my own. Her smile faltered. What? I gestured to my new sign, which I had placed directly opposite hers. Warning, repeat trespasser. Do not let this woman or her dog on your property. Karen's jaw dropped. You can't do that, she screeched. I shrugged. Why not? Free speech, right? Besides, I even added a picture of you. I had, in fact, printed out a still frame from my security camera footage, the one where she was gaping in horror as the sprinklers went off. It was beautiful. Karen turned a spectacular shade of purple. This is defamation. Only if it's not true, I said cheerfully. Which it is. She lunged for my sign, probably intending to rip it out of the ground, but the moment she stepped on my lawn, whoosh, sprinklers. Again. Karen let out an inhuman screech as she got drenched for the second time that week. I calmly pulled out my phone and very obviously opened the camera app. You might want to get out of the way, Karen. Wouldn't want another incident making the rounds online. Her eyes widened. She yanked Mr. Buttons back and stormed off, dripping wet, screeching something about calling the city. I waved. See you tomorrow, Karen. But deep down I knew she wasn't done. Oh no, this was just getting started. You ever get that feeling when something is just too quiet? like the storm is waiting to hit. That's how I felt after the last sprinkler incident. Karen had been suspiciously absent for 2 whole days. No morning power walks. No Mr. Buttons prancing around like he owned the place. No dramatic outbursts in my general direction. Which meant one of 2 things. Firstly, she had finally realized she couldn't win and had given up. Highly unlikely. Secondly, she was cooking up something truly insane. Much more likely. Turns out, I underestimated how far she was willing to go. Because on day 3, I woke up to something new in my yard. No pee. No poop. No ridiculous signs. This time, it was an official-looking letter taped to my front door. I ripped it off and read the first line. Notice of code violation. Unauthorized landscaping obstruction. Excuse me? I kept reading. Apparently, I had been reported to the city for installing an unapproved water system that creates hazardous conditions for pedestrians. Karen had reported by sprinklers. I laughed out loud, like a lunatic. This woman was truly unhinged. I pulled out my phone and immediately called the city. The poor guy on the other end sounded exhausted before I even finished explaining. Oh, he sighed. You're on Maple Street, aren't you? Yes. He let out a long, suffering groan. Yeah. We've gotten a lot of complaints from your neighbor Karen. Let me guess, I said. None of them were valid? Not a single one, he confirmed. She's been reporting neighbors for everything. Last week, she tried to file a complaint because someone had a garden gnome she didn't like. A garden gnome. This was next-level insanity. So, am I actually in violation of anything? I asked. The guy literally laughed. Sir, you have regular sprinklers. That's not illegal. I grinned. Great. In that case, can I file a counter-complaint for harassment? There was a pause. Then, you know what? Yeah, you can. The next morning, I was ready. As Karen came strutting down the sidewalk, I casually walked out to my mailbox, very obviously holding my own official-looking letter. She slowed. What's that? I smirked. Oh, just a little something from the city. You might want to check your mail today, Karen. Her expression flickered. What did you do? I shrugged. Just reported some ongoing neighborhood disturbances. Apparently, repeat false complaints can be considered harassment. Karen's face went from smug to panicked in record time. You can't do that. I gave her my best Karen impression. Oh, I just thought the neighborhood should be safe from toxic individuals. She stormed off so fast I thought Mr. Buttons might take flight. And from that day forward, no more complaints. No more poop. No more Mr. Buttons peeing on my plants. Victory.